Hello, this is Attorney Kip from Malik & Malik. Today I'm going to be talking about a case called Rajeh versus Steel City Corp. It's a 2004 case from the 7th District Court of Appeals in Ohio, and it's kind of the leading case and informative case on one particular question, and that particular specific question is, can undocumented or illegal immigrants or workers pursue workers' comp claims? And the simple answer is yes. So what ends up happening in this case, the underlying facts are there was this individual named Rajeh and he was a citizen of Lebanon, and he was convicted with conspiracy to distribute heroin in, I guess, federal court. And while his deportation, because he was convicted of distributing heroin, deportation proceedings had begun. And during that whole time period, he had obtained a job, but he didn't tell the employer that he was about to get deported. Meanwhile, he's working at this job and he got injured on a skid or something. So that's the underlying case. That's really not what this decision is about, other than the fact that this person was not qualified or allowed to work in the United States at the time that he got injured. So this case talks about a number of things, but essentially it discusses one of the underlying policies of the Ohio Workers' Compensation Statute, what they're trying to accomplish with it, and that is safety. And so the reasoning that this court gives, and that which has been followed by subsequent courts, is that if Ohio were to exclude undocumented and illegal aliens from participating in the workers' compensation system, then what that would do it would incentivize employers to hire undocumented workers and illegal immigrants, because it would be cheaper. You wouldn't have to buy workers' comp coverage, and the other thing for those workers, and the other thing is you might not have to uphold as many safety standards, because if you don't need to worry about whether or not you're injuring your workers, then maybe you could be lax on some things, because maybe it doesn't matter. So, and what that would do is that would undermine that goal, that policy goal, or that goal to have a safe job environment, because you would have legal workers who also would be working, so they would, and frankly, we don't want to hurt anybody, but they might get injured. The undocumented, they might get more injured, and the whole goal is safety, preventing injuries. So the excluding them would have the opposite effect. It would incentivize people to hire undocumented workers, maybe even more so than they're hired today. And they go on further analysis, and they go on to state that if the Ohio Legislature had specifically wanted to exclude undocumented workers or illegal immigrants from the workers' compensation statute in Ohio, then they would have actually explicitly contained it within that exclusion within the definition of what an employee is in the Ohio workers' compensation statute, which they don't do. And the court in Rajeh versus Steel City, they actually point to the fact that Ohio has excluded undocumented workers, illegal immigrants, from pursuing unemployment benefits. And if you look at that statute, 4141.29J says, benefits shall not be paid on the basis of employment performed by an alien unless the alien had been lawfully admitted to the United States for permanent residence at the time the services were performed and was lawfully present for the purposes of performing the service, or was otherwise permanently residing in the United States under the color of law at the time of service. So unemployment, if you're an undocumented worker in Ohio, you're not entitled to receive it. So you don't get that. But workers' comp benefits, you can file a workers' comp claim and pursue compensation and benefits through your workers' comp claim, assuming it's allowed. And the unique thing also with that, how that works in Ohio, is if the injured worker, let's say they file a claim, the claim's allowed, and either they're deported or they want to move back to whatever country they're from. Assuming they can find a provider who will become Ohio BWC certified and will fill out all the paperwork and whatnot, they can continue to receive medical treatment paid by the Ohio Workers' Compensation Fund. and compensation, again, paid out of the Ohio BWC fund. Now be aware, the Ohio BWC fund is not funded by the taxpayers, and it's funded, again, by employers by buying workers' compensation coverage. So another possible reason why they don't exclude undocumented workers is because then before workers' comp in Ohio, you would have to file like a tort, and if these folks, undocumented workers, illegal aliens, were not entitled, if they weren't required to file a workers' comp claim, if that was not their only remedy, and they were excluded from that, they would still might be able to file. Then if they're excluded from that, then they might be able to file like a personal injury suit, and that actually may have more, that might actually be incredibly detrimental depending on what the nature of the injury is. So for example, let's say for some reason the statute changes, undocumented workers are excluded from the workers' compensation statute, and then that undocumented worker cuts off their hand. Then if they're excluded, then their remedy might be filing a personal injury suit. They would have to, if you're pursuing a personal injury suit, you have to prove negligence on the part of whoever the tortfeasor is. So they'd have to prove negligence on the part of whoever this employer was, and then their employer can assert the usual defenses to a negligent lawsuit, i.e., the injured worker's own negligence and whatever they did was negligent, and that was the cause of their injury, or assumption of the risk, or whatever. So the employer would be able to assert those defenses. But if the injured worker, on a personal injury theory, they might be able to they might be able to pursue at a trial like massive economic damages. So if it was a workers' comp claim and you lose your hand, God forbid any of that, any of you lose your hand, I don't want that to happen, but if you were, you could pursue what's called a scheduled loss, or your award would be limited to the benefits in the workers' comp statute, and one of those would be scheduled loss, and it's like 200 plus weeks of compensation under the statute. So versus, and however much money that equates to, versus if this was a personal injury lawsuit, you might be able to file economic, non-economic, punitive damages. So you might be able to pursue for that same injury if it wasn't covered. If workers' comp didn't cover you and your only remedy was a personal injury suit, then you might be able to get an award of millions at trial. But that's not the case. So if you get, God forbid, the person cuts off their hand at work, their sole remedy is a workers' comp claim. So that is law in Ohio in the Rajeh versus Steel City Corp, and things haven't changed, and they likely will not change. Undocumented illegal immigrants who get injured on the job and they're employees of their employer, and the injury occurs in the course of and arising out of employment, they are entitled to file for benefits and medical treatment, payment of medical treatment, and various forms of compensation, assuming their claim was allowed. So it's an interesting area of workers' comp law. Anyways, so as I said at the end of all these videos, workers' comp law in Ohio is incredibly complex and labyrinthine. Please, I urge you, if you have a workers' comp case or claim, talk to an attorney, talk to 4 attorneys, run your fact pattern by them. They'll let you know, hey, you probably should get an attorney, or maybe you don't need to get an attorney, but don't do this alone. Call somebody. When you call an attorney, it's going to be free. They're not going to charge you workers' comp, they're attorneys anyways for plaintiffs. They're not going to charge you a fee for a consult. Ask your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, hey, who have you used in the past? Do you recommend anybody? Otherwise, look at Google, read the reviews, go that way. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, please leave them in the comments below, or you can email me or call my office and discuss whatever your questions are or whatever is arising out of your work injury. Please stay safe. You've been listening to Attorney Kip from Malik and Malik. Thank you.